Good morning or good evening. It is time for today's Tax Talk. I'm your host. I'm attorney Stephen Lee. Let's change this because we're kind of talking about gig economy today. It is Monday, June 27th, the year of our Lord 2022. I think a couple weeks ago we did the CP14. What does that mean? Because these notices are going to start coming out by the IRS. Between the time, April 18th when our tax returns were due, and now, the IRS has been pretty busy processing tax returns. Now July is coming up, end of June, July. They're going to start sending a lot of notices out. And so a lot of people are going to start having questions. Well, what is this? And I'm using the gig economy because of this CP2000 is something that a lot of people in the gig economy are going to find out what it is. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Won't you join us? Yeah, so the IRS is going to start sending a lot of notices. We talked about the CP14, just saying, hey, you owe us money. Usually it means you filed your tax return and you knew you owed the money and you didn't give them the money. And now they're saying, hey, you've got to pay us. The CP2000 is a little bit different. And again, I'm using this gig economy because a lot of people in the gig economy are going to get this. And wait till next year when these cash apps start sending out these 1099Ks. And these are what they call information returns. Information return is a document that's created by a third party, and they send information to the IRS about your financial situation. So either they paid you some money, or they gave you some interest. For instance, you got a 1098, which is the interest that you paid on your mortgages. So any information about your finances, they send a copy to the IRS, and they're to send you a copy. And then you are to use these information returns in filing your tax return. Now, many people don't know what this is, and there's a whole list of 1099s. I think there's at least 20 different 1099s that people get. I mentioned the 1099K. I mentioned the 1099. I will mention the 1099C, which is cancellation of debt. 1099 NEC, the non-employment compensation, the miscellaneous. So there's a whole bunch of them. And these are generally income. 1099s generally are income to the taxpayer. And then this reported to the IRS. So now the IRS has notice. And again, this is what's going to happen with these 1099Ks, with these cash apps. You may not have to pay taxes on the reported amount, but there's going to be a reported amount, I believe. I know a lot of people say, well, it wasn't really for wages or for sales or anything like that. It was just me and my friends, and so it's just between friends. We won't get a 1099K. I think you're going to get a 1099K, and then it'll be up to you as the taxpayer to explain it. And if you don't, that's when you're going to get the 1099 the CP2000, and that's what we're talking about today. Okay, the CP2000. So let's go into this about what the IRS explains what a CP2000 is. IRS explains CP2000 letters sent to taxpayers when tax return information doesn't match information from third parties. When a tax returns information doesn't match data reported to the Internal Revenue Service by employers, banks, or other third parties, the IRS will send a letter to the taxpayer. The letter is called IRS Notice CP2000, and it gives detailed information about issues the IRS identified and provides steps taxpayers should take to resolve those issues. Again, even though you're not this 1099K and these cash apps, you may not have to owe more taxes. the responsibility is going to be on the taxpayer to explain it. Where did that? Well, that was just me. I meet with a friend once a month, and he picks up the tab, and I pay him back on the Cash App, and that's all that is. So we did this 12 times. It was $60, $70 per time. It's over $600, and that's what the CP2000 the 1099K is, from the Cash App. And so the third party reporting company, whether it's PayPal or something like that, will send you a 1099K and also send a return to this information return to the IRS. And now the IRS has both of them in their system, and they'll check automatically. It'll check. Here's a 1099K or a 1099C or a 1099 NEC. Here's one that was reported by this institution with this Social Security number. Did this Social Security number report it? And if you didn't, this is when you get the CP2000. Okay. The IRS provides a phone number on each letter. IRS telephone assisters can explain the letter and what taxpayers need to do to resolve any discrepancies. I just read today that the IRS in this last tax season answered 10% of the phone calls. So a phone call probably isn't going to work. Watch out for tax scams. I think that goes without saying. There's some YouTube videos here tell you very much what I'm telling you here. What this notice is about. Okay, so this is another understanding your CP2000 notice. The income or payment information we have on file doesn't match the information reported on your tax return. So again, I had some negotiations with my credit card company. They said I owed them $10,000, and maybe I did, and I just didn't have the money to pay them. So we reached a settlement. They agreed to take $5,000, and then they wrote off the other $5,000. It was forgiven debt. Well, that other $5,000 is going to be reported to the IRS on a 1099-C. And if I don't report the 1099-C myself on my tax return, now remember, even if I don't get a 1099-C, I'm supposed to report that as income because the 16th Amendment, all income from whatever source derived is taxable, whether I get a 1099 or not. But most people don't know that that forgiven debt is for taxable. They don't even know it. And then they get this 1099-C, and then they don't know what to do with it. And so they do nothing. Or very often, they don't even get the 1099-C. So they don't put it on their tax return. Now, this is a big part of my job here. This is where I've come across this form and these issues many times. The IRS is getting better with these IRS Forms CP2000. It's much more automatic now than it used to be, because it used to take the IRS a year, sometimes longer, to match these numbers. And then it was then that you'd get one and said, hey, wait a minute, there's a difference here. Here's what you said. This is what we found. And again, it might be a year, 2 years, 3 years later. And so I've had clients who, for instance, just recently I had a client who had got a 1099-C. He never received it. It was for a foreclosed home. Actually, it was what they call a deed in lieu of foreclosure. So he was losing his home to foreclosure. The mortgage company agreed to take the deed instead of foreclosing on him. So he signed over the deed to them. They wrote off a very big portion of that debt, and they took the deed. He didn't know that balance, which was over $200,000, was going to be imputed to him as income, and he never got a 1099-C. Several years later, the IRS said, hey, you owe us, and here's the thing, this is why you have to always answer your IRS mail, because he didn't understand it. I shouldn't say that, because in this case that I'm talking about, he wrote the IRS several times and told them, hey, IRS, this is what happened. I don't really owe that money. But he didn't really understand it, so he didn't really address it the way it's supposed to be addressed. So eventually the IRS said, hey, you owe us well over $100,000. I think it was $230,000 actually. So it was more than $200,000 that he owed. So anyway, so then he came to see us, right? So then we had to go back and amend his tax return, put the 1099-C in there, and prove to the IRS he didn't owe that money, and he didn't. And matter of fact, he got a big refund, over $20,000 in refund that the IRS had kept. So this is what happens. This is how it manifests itself. These 1099-Cs and then the CP2000. Many times, again, the CP2000 is sometime down the road. And again, they're saying, this is what you said, this is what they said, and this is what we think it is. And so they make a change to your tax return. And it gives you an opportunity to object. I object, and then you can put out all your facts. Again, my client did it. He did object, but he didn't know how to object. And so he just said, no, that's not right. And then he just let it go. With a 1099-C, there's a whole form and procedure you have to go through to prove to the IRS that it's not taxable. They won't just say, you say, it wasn't taxable. And they don't just write that off. You have to prove it. And that's what most people don't really realize. Okay, so what you need to do, read the notice. Well, read the notice carefully. Complete the notice response form and state whether you agree or disagree with the notice. The response form explains what actions to take. Again, my client did this, and he thought he followed the rules, but they just wouldn't. They wouldn't agree to say he didn't owe that money. If you agree with the proposed changes, it says you can sign it and everything. If you agree and you don't do anything, they'll send you another form. So here's another. They'll send you this CP3219A, and this just says what they call a notice of deficiency. Whenever the IRS, so for instance, if I get an audit and the auditor finds that there's a difference between what I said in my tax returns and what they found, there'll be a deficiency. I owe money. And this is what, in our business, we call this the 90-day letter, because you'll get a notice of deficiency. What this is, a notice of deficiency. And so here's what this notice is about. We received information that is different from what you reported on your tax return. This may result in an increase or decrease in your tax. The notice explains how the amount was calculated, what to do if you agree or disagree, and how you can challenge it in tax court if you choose to do so. So they'll say, you have 90 days. This is what we found. You owe, in my client's case, was over $200,000. You owe us $200,000. Tell us why you don't. Now you have 90 days to do something. But you also have 90 days to file a case in tax court. And so oftentimes we will file a case in tax court because it gives you an appeal, and it gives you a venue to object and prove you don't owe that. Right? But if you let that 90 days go by, you don't have the right to go to tax court any longer. Now, you could still probably object and win. It becomes a little bit more difficult. And so you want to generally get involved and go to tax court and object. That's what we usually do. And so that's what I would suggest. So what you must do, read the notice carefully. It explains the proposed increase or decrease. You can submit your response. If you agree with the changes, I can tell you that if you send a response by mail or something, it's going to take more than 90 days for them to come up with whether they're going to agree or not. And in those 90 days, after the 90 days are over, you don't have an opportunity to go to tax court. So usually you don't want to put it, at least in my office, when we do something like this, we won't do it by mail. We'll just file a tax court case, and that'll give us we'll cement our rights to an appeal. And also not only to an appeals officer, but also to a judge if we want to. And we can prove to the judge that this is wrong. If you agree, you don't have to, sign the form, or you don't have to do anything, because they will start charging you now. Now they've said you owe it. Now they're going to go back to the time. That that it was due, and that's what you're going to pay interest on. So I wanted to, let me do this. Here's this taxpayer advocates service, Notice CP2000. I thought this was interesting. I put this on my show before, this map, taxpayer roadmap. So it says here, CP2000, request a verification of unreported income. Sometimes they call it underreported. So again, and I just want to show you this. This is how complicated it can be. Here's their saying here. Find out where you are on the map. So let's see if we can get this to work here. So here's the roadmap here on the right, and they're saying, well, what form are you looking? Enter the IRS form. Well, we've already put that in 2000, the CP2000. So you can see where it is on the map here, CP2000. Let me take this down a little bit so you can see the map. Okay, so here's the map. Okay, and here's all the tax preparation, tax return processing. So you're just in the tax return processing stage. It hasn't really gone to exam or all the collections or all this other stuff. You're still up here. Okay, so I just thought this was interesting. And again, I've shown this before. And I know that the IRS thinks that this makes it seem easier, but I think people just get more confused when they see this map. That's how easy it is? That's pretty confusing. It is pretty confusing. So anyway, that's the CP2000. You want to put it in writing initially with the CP2000. Usually the IRS is right. They got a CP, they got a 1099-C, they got a 1099-K, they got a 1099, and they see that you didn't report, and the IRS is right. Usually. Not always. They make mistakes. Some people will send you a 1099-C when they shouldn't have. Or maybe they'll say that you did some, maybe you'll get a 1099-B. So I've gotten these from people, from your broker. And they didn't know what the basis was, so maybe you did a bunch of trades. This has happened a lot in crypto. So cryptocurrency, you've been doing some trading in cryptocurrency. I have a client now that they say he owes well over $150,000. But he says, I didn't make any money in crypto, but he didn't keep good records. And so when they got the 1099-Bs, they just showed what he sold. They never took account for what the basis was of the purchases, right? So if I buy something for $3 and then I sell it for $3.50, I've only made 50 cents. But if they don't know that I paid $3, they'll say I made $3.50 on that total transaction, and they will tax me on the full amount. Now, if I've done this thousands of times in a year, and in the end I lost, it looks like I made tons of money, and I really didn't. And that's another time I'll get this CP2000. This is what you said. This is what we found. Tell us why we're wrong. So again, these all go to these information returns, and the Congress and Joe Biden have been very aggressive in trying to issue more information returns. One of the information returns they want to issue is about your bank's account. They want the banks to report to them every year exactly what went in and out of your bank account. So then they can come back and say, hey, why did this happen? Where did this? You didn't report this money. Where did it come from? And maybe you got it, wherever you got it from. I always say, it's true that if the IRS, if they had the right to just go into our bank accounts and all of our other accounts and look to see what we did, they probably would gather more money. But at what cost, right? If we let the police come into our homes unannounced whenever they felt like it, crime would probably go down. At what cost? Right? We're a free society. We can't allow that to happen, in my opinion. So anyway, I hope this helped you understand what a CP2000 is, what to do. Nowadays, they're matching for CP2000s, but now they're also matching for what they call an SFR, a substitute for return. So if you don't file a tax return, they have all the documents to file a tax return for you, and they will. And it's not a service. They're not helping you by filing this tax return on your behalf. It's a penalty. You will pay more. but they can't collect from you until they assess a tax against you. And they can't assess a tax against you until they have a return. So if you do not file a tax return, they'll file it for you. Now they assess the tax against you, and now they can start collecting, start levying your bank accounts, things like that. So anyway, that's what's going on here. I'm using the gig economy because many people in the gig economy get these 1099s that they don't know what they are, or maybe they get so many and they don't include all of them. And they're the people that are really getting these CP2000s. So anyway, I hope that explained what a CP2000 is, and maybe you can understand it a little bit better. Remember that, if you're having some problems, let me go back. If they ask you to like or subscribe, we need to get this information out, and we need your help to do so. So please like and subscribe our content. Remember, if you fight the IRS, if you owe the IRS, if you got a CP2000 and it's wrong, you should probably get a copy of my book, Deal with Your IRS Problem Today. Go to freeirsbook.com, freeirsbook.com. Get your free copy of Deal with Your IRS Problem Today. We will ask for a small shipping fee. It generally doesn't even cover our shipping costs, let alone the handling and everything that's in the box. So again, go to freeirsbook.com. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you again here. Probably not tomorrow. I think I'm going to the baseball game tomorrow night. Probably going to miss Crypto Tuesday. I'll try to get it out earlier if I can. So thanks so much for joining us, and we will see you soon.